All right. Welcome, everyone. This is Dr. Clark from the Center for Weight Loss Success. Today on Losing Weight USA, we're going to talk a little bit about reading food labels. And there are lots of things that are on packaging. Um, and the label is one of them. It is required. And then we'll also talk about what other things are on packaging and just realize that most of those things actually are marketing materials. But we'll go through what is required, what does it all mean. All right, so welcome to Losing Weight USA, real-time answers to your weight loss questions. Some of the latest updates, a little bit of expert advice. Gives you direct access not only to me, but you should be receiving the health tips and recipes via the membership portal. If you have questions, just type them into the chat box as we go along. We'll answer them at the end. If you think of things once we're all done, just give us a yell here at the Center for Weight Loss Success. Email success@cfwls.com. Phone number 757-873-1880. And the store is still open, even though we're looking for clinical space. Still, the store is still open. You can always stop by, check your body count, that kind of thing. But make sure you're also getting into the membership site. All right, so let me flip slides over here. All right, there we go. So again, we're talking about food labels, what's on them, what's required, and it's not just that nutrition box. You know, that's one of the most important things you can look at, and we'll go over that. And as you recall, as I've said multiple times, the best food has no labels on it. The things that we ought to eat, good protein sources, vegetable salad stuff, the best food has no labels on it. We buy it, we prepare it ourselves. So eating whole, eating clean, eating green, whatever one wants to call that is always a good idea. All right, so, but reality is we're going to buy things that are packaged, and therefore there's going to be food labels on them. So the FDA requires certain things to be on a food label. The ones that they truly require are in the nutrition facts box, and we're all pretty familiar with that. It'll have serving size. We're going to go through what it has on it, but that's a pretty familiar thing that we've seen on any type of food packaging. Then there may be other types of things, claims on the food label. Some of these things that are claimed on there do require FDA approval. Many of them do not, and most of what's on a food label is actually marketing. And so to kind of grab you, so to speak, to get you to buy something. All right. So looking at the nutrition facts, the facts label, and this has changed slightly since I made this slide, but I'll show you the good example on the next slide, actually. But they're basically going to have very similar things out. This is what is required on there. And so what is required on a nutrition facts label or box there? First thing is it's going to require the serving size. So often many packages then have multiple servings within that. And just realize sometimes the serving size is a lot bigger than we ever thought it was. And sometimes like a certain package, and this used to be true on a lot of beverages that were bought. On the package, we buy, single drink beverages, but on the packaging, it would actually say, hey, there's actually 3 servings in here, or 2 servings in here, even though typically we drank the whole thing. We weren't sharing it amongst other people. So you do have to kind of keep it on how many servings are actually in there, because specifically with a beverage, then, hey, you drank it all yourself, and you look at the nutrition box, and the facts box there is that it may have made it, there were actually a couple different servings. So what you're seeing then were much smaller numbers. All right, that's changed a lot today. I don't think that they can do that anymore. So typical serving size, and then how many servings are in the container, okay? How many calories from servings, and how many calories from each serving, and also how many calories are from fat in each serving. And this is kind of a leftover thing from 40, 50 years ago now, when they're thinking, oh yeah, everybody's got to be low fat. And so subsequently the fat was labeled on there. Okay. That's still kind of required there. Then there's going to be some nutrient amounts, and what is the percent of the daily recommended values? Um, RDAs, or recommended daily allowances, are often on there. Now they've changed that somewhat to daily values so that when you're looking at just vitamins, RDAs made sense, but RDAs don't make so much sense when you look at macronutrients then. So they changed this to the wording, percentage of daily values. And then we'll have the total fat on there. I mentioned the total calories, but the total fat on there separates out saturated and trans, how much cholesterol is in there, the amount of sodium in there, because that was a big thing a number of years ago, how much sodium people were getting. And then it does look at the carbohydrate amount, how much fiber is in there, how much sugar is in there, and then nowadays also sugar, alcohols, and finally look at macronutrients of the protein, how much protein is in there. Then there are 4 nutrients that they do put in there as percent of the daily allowances type of things. Vitamin A, vitamin C, calcium, iron. And then finally at the bottom, and this is an important spot, and that's kind of in the slide, it's kind of circled in the oval down there. It's the ingredients. What is actually in there? And I would recommend you take a look at this, because what you want to make sure is that most of the ingredients are things we can pronounce, so to speak, is that they're real food ingredients type of thing, as opposed to a bunch of chemicals that most of us can't pronounce. But they're going to be placed in the decreasing order of weight. Okay, so the first thing, the first ingredient is always going to be what is the the most of that ingredient, or what has the most in this product. Okay, whether it be in this example, there's like wheat flours in there. There's also unsweetened chocolate. But if you're looking at anything, it's going to have it in decreasing order by weight. Okay? And hopefully all those things you can't pronounce are going to be way at the end, and try to avoid a lot of those things you can't pronounce. So this kind of next slide just looks at an example of the newer nutrition facts, and they've kind of stress looking at calories. That's supposed to jump right out at you. But then it still has the total fat, how much is saturated fat, how much is trans fat, and anything, and trans fat has to be on a label. Now for most, and we're going to talk about trans fat in a minute here, but in most of it, it should be 0. Okay, on most things, it should be 0. Then total cholesterol, how much sodium, so the total carbohydrate, and then breaks the carbohydrate down to fiber, sugars, added sugars, and they do still require kind of sugar alcohols if they're in there. They should be labeled on there. And then at the bottom of that is kind of the protein. And I went through again those other vitamins that have to be on there. Vitamin D, calcium, and a couple minerals, iron and potassium have to be on there. And again, then just below that is going to be what are the ingredients. All right, so that's a nutrition facts label. Now, we're going to go through some of these things and what they mean, because often then that's in the facts label, but on the marketing or in the rest of the packaging, there's going to be all kinds of different claims on there. So food label claims, what do they actually mean? So for just specifically calories, because that's in bold on that newer box. So calories are going to be in there, but then they can add other adjectives there. Low calorie, reduced calorie, calorie free. What do these things actually mean? Low calorie means it has less than 40 calories per serving. Okay, so that's per serving. So if you eat multiple servings, obviously there's more calories in there. So if low calorie, less than 40 calories per serving. Reduced calorie means there's 25% less than what would be a regular product. Okay, so sometimes it'll be labeled as light. We'll talk about that as well. But reduced calorie basically means there's 25% less calories than what the regular product would have. And then calorie free. When it says it's calorie free, what does it actually mean? Okay, it means that there's less than 5 calories per serving. Okay. Now this is important when when actually it can have 4 calories per serving and can be labeled calorie free, or 3 calories per serving. It can be labeled calorie free. Now, the issue there is often a lot of those things that are labeled calorie free, we may have multiple servings. Well, like just an example, some sweeteners there, especially like sugar alcohols, they're not calorie free, but they may be labeled calorie free because in a serving that's less than 5 calories. But if you use multiple packages of these things, then subsequently all of a sudden these can start adding up. So just realize, just because it's labeled calorie free doesn't actually mean it truly is calorie free. Often on like we talked just recently on some of the additive sugar artificial sweeteners, and like Splenda, and they make it now for baking, and it's not really calorie free. A serving size is like a teaspoon, which in itself has less than 5 calories. But often if we're baking something, you may be using a cup of something like that, and it actually has significant, I think as I recall, it's like 92 calories, something like that, from the previous discussion that we've had. I don't remember exactly what that was, but realize that some of these things aren't really calorie free, especially if we're using multiple amounts. If you're into baking or something, it's not quite as low calorie as maybe advertised, so to speak. All right, sodium does a similar thing. Anything that has sodium in it, if something's low sodium, it means there's less than 140 milligrams per serving. Okay, then you can break it down further. Very low sodium means there's less than 35. So this is literally minuscule amounts, less than 35 milligrams per serving. Reduced, and this is, you'll find there's a common theme in a lot of these label claims. Reduced something usually means there's less than 25%, or there's, 25% less than what the regular product will have. So something that is reduced typically is going to have at least less than 25% of the amount that's in a regular product. Now, excuse me, I said that incorrectly. It has to be 25% less than what the regular product has. Then sodium-free, similar things, but we're talking about this is so minuscule as that, less than 5 milligrams per serving. That's literally tiny amounts. But realize some of these things that we claim are in the label say free. They may not actually be truly free. Sodium is one of those things that's such a small amount, it's hard for that to matter. All right. Fat. Similar type of concept, though, kind of low fat, fat free, low saturated fat, less saturated fat, reduced saturated fat, saturated fat free, trans fat free. They all have different definitions to them, and these again are FDA. It has to follow the FDA guidelines. Something that is low fat has to have less than 3 grams of fat per serving. Fat free means there's less than half a gram of fat per serving. Now again, just half a gram, so that's a minuscule amount. But if there is something that we're taking multiple, we're utilizing multiple amounts then, or multiple servings then, just realize it's not quite as free as what you may have thought. Okay. Low saturated fat means there's, and this is specific for saturated fats, okay, is less than 1 gram of saturated fat per serving, or less than half a gram. And half a gram, less than half a gram of trans fat in there. Trans fat's bad. You want as little as possible, but again, realize that even if it's labeled trans fat free, I skipped to the end of the slide now, it doesn't necessarily mean there's truly no trans fat in it. Okay, but they are very, very small amounts. You just have to realize if you're having multiple servings, it may not be so trans fat free. Okay. Reduced saturated fat, again, this kind of reduced, it has to be greater than 25% less than what the regular product is. Okay? So kind of if you think reduced, and that's a fairly common term that's out there, it has to be 25% less or more than what's in the regular product. Saturated fat free, again, it doesn't have to quite be 0, it has to be less than 0.5 grams. Trans fat free, I just mentioned, trans fat you want to avoid. So other claims, when they talk about cholesterol, if I've ever talked to you about cholesterol, I'm not a big cholesterol warrior. Again, cholesterol is more of an inflammatory process that can cause heart problems. Does the actual cholesterol cause the problem? That's an up in the air issue there. But something that's low cholesterol, again, cholesterol has no calories in it. So although we worry, we talk about cholesterol, and it is something you shouldn't take just lightly, but still, low cholesterol basically means there's less than 20 milligrams of cholesterol per serving, as well as less than 2 grams of saturated fat per serving. Fat and cholesterol are two different types of fat, but cholesterol is completely different than a saturated fat. Okay. Chemically, they don't look anything like each other. Okay. And cholesterol is something we can't live without. I think we've also recently talked about cholesterol. Those things maybe a month or two ago. All right, reduced cholesterol, and again, the reduced thing. Okay, you have to have at least 25% less cholesterol per serving than the regular product. Okay. Cholesterol free, again, it's not necessarily for it to be truly cholesterol free, but it has to be less than 2 milligrams of cholesterol per serving. So kind of those are some general, just keep in mind. And those are fairly common themes on label claims. Okay. All right, what about on meat labels? Because you often see lean meat, extra lean, all those things. They're basically, when we're putting these new labels on it, and it's comparing it to the regular, okay? But on meat and poultry, lean basically means there's less than 10 grams of fat per serving and less than 4.5 grams of saturated fat, as well as combined with trans fat. But meat itself isn't going to have trans fat in it. So until we fry it, then you convert some of that. Fried things typically will convert some things that don't have trans fat into them to have trans fat, because frying actually is where some of this is produced. It's a chemical reaction that occurs with frying. It can also happen in baking products too. Not bacon, baking. Okay. All right, then also lean also means less than 95 milligrams of cholesterol per serving. So it has a number of layers to that lean. Less than 10 grams of fat, less than 4.5 grams of saturated fat, and less than 95 milligrams of cholesterol. That's lean. Extra lean, we'll take that down a notch. Okay, and it has to have less than 5 grams of fat per serving, less than 2 grams of saturated fat, and still kind of less than 95 milligrams of cholesterol per serving there. So it's lean versus extra versus the regular product. Fiber. I think we're going to talk about fiber next week anyway, but it's a fiber, kind of something that's labeled high fiber. What does that actually mean? And it says high fiber. Anything that has 5 grams of fiber per serving, 5 grams or more fiber per serving. So greater than 5 grams of fiber per serving is high fiber. Okay, that's kind of the FDA definition. Good source of fiber means that not quite as high as high fiber, but 2.5 to 4.9. If it had 5, you'd call it high fiber. If it's a good source of fiber, that's 2.5 grams all the way up to 4.9 grams of fiber per serving. Sugar, carbohydrates. Okay? Every carbohydrate is broken down to sugar. Fiber is basically a non-digestible carbohydrate. Sugar. So sugar-free, what does that actually mean? It means it has less than 5 grams, 0.5 grams of sugar per serving. Okay, so again, not necessarily sugar-free, but it has very, very small amounts. And it really somewhat depends on how many servings did you actually have. Okay? Because sometimes when things are sugar-free, we may have multiple servings of them, and all of a sudden it doesn't become so sugar-free. So just keep these things in mind. When something is, quote, free, nothing's free. Okay? When something is, quote, free, it doesn't necessarily mean there's none in there. All right, so what about other food claims that we'll see? We'll often see things labeled as light. Okay, what does that mean? Light is a very broadly defined descriptor or adjective, because it can mean multiple things. And it can mean something as simple as it's lighter in color than the regular product is, like light brown sugar. It's lighter in color Doesn't necessarily mean there's less or it's a light sugar type of thing. No, it's literally lighter in color. Okay. But it also can mean that there's a third less calories in it than the regular product, or half the fat of the regular product. Again, it could be lighter in color. Or for when you're talking about salt, the sodium content is reduced 50%. Okay? So subsequently, light something could actually have a number of different things that it could mean. So what if they say something is healthy? What does that actually mean? It's healthy. It's a broad term. It sounds good. We like things to be healthy. Okay, what it basically means that it's low in fat, low in saturated fat, low in trans fat, low in cholesterol, as well as low in sodium, and so it has to be low in all those things, and has at least 10% of the daily value of some important vitamins. Again, things that are labeled on that nutrition box: vitamin A, vitamin C, iron, calcium. Okay. So, but also it's got at least 10% of some daily important vitamins, or 10% of the protein you need, or 10% of the fiber that you would require in a day. And these are RDAs, okay, recommended daily allowances. Okay. So healthy, again, means it's low in a bunch of things. It's mainly fat, cholesterol, sodium, but then is relatively higher, meaning it has at least 10% of the daily values of some vitamins, vitamin A, vitamin C, iron and minerals, iron and calcium, and then as well as, not all of these, could have one of these, but has at least 10% of protein that you require for the day, 10% of fiber that you require for the day. That's healthy right there. I'm a broad definition. There are probably a lot of things out there labeled healthy, may or may not be that healthy for you. Now, I also see very frequently a good source of. What does good source of mean? It means that it provides at least 10% of the daily value of a particular vitamin or some nutrient. A vitamin or nutrient, at least 10%. So it's a good source of, versus healthy, which also has to be low in some certain things. A good source of just means it has to have at least 10% of your daily value of a particular vitamin or some important nutrient per serving. Another descriptor, high in. High in. What is high in? Something that is high in whatever. Okay, it means it provides at least 20%, as opposed to a good source of, which is 10%. High in, okay, bumps that up. Has to be at least 20% of the daily value of a specified nutrient per serving. So again, these claims, and they'll be on there. And this is what they actually mean. Now, often on the label or in the packaging, okay, there'll be health claims. And the health claims on there, such as, build strong body, generic claims. I'm trying to think of what child was, build strong bodies, build strong bones, provides energy, some health kind of claims, things like that. So a written claim that describes, and basically what it means is that there's a written claim that describes the relationship between a substance, food component, dietary supplement, and then a disease process or a health-related condition. As milk building strong bones type of thing. This is a health claim on the label. Vitamin D, you're kind of added in there to help build strong bones. This does require anything that has a health claim on it, between a substance and a health condition. Kind of what's the relationship there? It requires FDA approval. You can't just throw something on there and say, oh yeah, I think so. It's like, no, it does require FDA approval. And the FDA looks at it, and it may not prove one way or the other, but the FDA, what it does then is kind of looks at the level of scientific evidence in that, and it rates that A, B, C, or D. And something that is a level A scientific evidence, mean there's good evidence. Okay, there's no, and if there is good evidence that this is real, then no disclaimer is needed on the label. B, C, or D basically is kind of referring to, hey, there's less and less evidence, from gee, it's supportive, to down to D is very little scientific evidence supporting the claim. And all of these then require a disclaimer, which if you've ever looked at any supplement bottle or any kind of nutritional thing, often it'll say, there's a disclaimer on it, the FDA has not researched this, and they've not, they can't substantiate what this claim is saying. Okay? So, but if it does, if there is significant agreement in science that helps support this, then it legally can put on a label or put on the packaging. Okay? And I don't think it actually, I've never noticed anyway, that if it's level B, C, or D, does it actually have to be labeled B, C, or D, or does it just have to have the disclaimer? And it really looks like it just has to have the disclaimer. It doesn't tell you what type of support it actually is. Structure and function claims, such as states how the substance actually affects a function of the body. Improves joint health, lowers your cholesterol, things that, so these are more, well, that's probably more of a health claim. Structure claim kind of improves, age with eyesight, some of the vitamins that are on there, kind of thing. Things that the structure and function claims. And it's a claim on a label, so it's how, whatever this product is, how does it affect a function of the body? Okay? Digestive health, better vision, prostate support, all the things like this. So consumers that are much more likely to see this type of thing, because they don't necessarily require FDA approval on there. And no one's it doesn't require review of the scientific evidence there. And they may or may not be scientifically accurate. Or it may just be someone giving an opinion on it. So typically all supplements that you buy, kind of that vitamin, mineral supplements, that type of thing, they all have to have this disclaimer on it. A food product itself, food products, that actually doesn't require a disclaimer. A supplement, such as a fiber supplement, such as a vitamin mineral type supplement, phytonutrient supplements, they have to have a disclaimer. A food product doesn't necessarily require a disclaimer. Now, off the top of my head, I don't think that, so we talked about an artificial sweetener or a couple of weeks ago, whenever we did, in that we talked about stevia. Okay, is that it's actually, it can be considered a food product because it comes from a plant. Okay, and so it doesn't necessarily have to require some of these things, as many of the artificial sweeteners are truly, they have to have disclaimers on them. They have to, because they're chemically made. Whereas kind of the product in stevia is literally just extracted from the plant into sweetener. So supplements require a disclaimer, and their food products themselves do not. All right, so kind of looking at that, it is important to get used to looking at labels. And again, I go back right to what I said at the beginning, the best food has no labels on it. We purchase it fresh, we prepare it, we eat it. Good protein sources, vegetable salad stuff. Okay, that's what we ought to have a basis of our diet right there. But obviously we're going to buy things that are packaged. Okay, it is important to understand what it actually means, because a lot of it is truly marketing on there, in that there may not be scientific evidence, maybe minimal scientific evidence that this is true of what they're actually saying. So I encourage people to learn about food labels, practice. Okay? Look at the food label. Most important things are in that nutrition box I mentioned. But then there's all kinds of other things, information on there. Some of it is valuable, some of it is just marketing. So it is kind of let the buyer beware. And just a little comment about daily values or recommended daily allowances. Okay, the daily values are generally determined to prevent a disease state. This is especially true in vitamins and minerals. The RDA is actually, it's the smallest amount that will prevent a disease state in most people. Okay? Has nothing to do with what are optimal levels in kind of producing optimal health. So kind of keep that in mind. Even just looking at vitamin mineral things, it's got this much of the RDA. Well, the RDA is the smallest amount that will prevent a deficiency. That's what it is. That's the definition right there. And so that has nothing to do with what are optimal amounts someone taking. So the buyer must beware. Okay, caveat emptor. So buyer beware. Most of what is on food labels really is marketing. And I'll encourage most people when you're looking at food labels, the most important thing from a weight perspective, my perspective, is count your carbohydrate. Okay? Count your carbohydrate and subsequently then that, because everyone, I say this over and over again, everyone has a carbohydrate tipping point. At a certain level, they struggle. All right, very good. I think that was the last slide. Yeah, if there are questions, I don't see something written up there at the moment. But if you think of questions, just pick up the phone, send an email, send a text. That works as well. And get a little reminder, yes, make sure that you are getting into the membership site. You can certainly stop by the store. The store's still open. We do have the body count machine in there if you want to get your body count there. But make sure you're logging into the membership portal. You should be receiving the weight loss tips as well as the weekly recipes. Tune in each Tuesday, 12:15 for the next webinar. Watch your email for the invite and link. And remember, it's your life. Make it a healthy one. Have a good day, everyone. Take care.